everyone. I'm here to talk about the Streamlit app. This is a front-end GUI for our pre-built API Python notebooks. It's a really clean and smooth way to interact with some of these more sophisticated notebooks in a visual format. So the first thing you want to do is just really put in your API key. It'll automatically start running. You can see it running here in the upper right-hand corner. This first set of charts is considered the volumes charts. It's really going to show us taker flow, or the street's perspective of the recent activity. So essentially what we have here is we can put in a date range, and then the types of trade we can segment from block to on screen. We can also narrow down the strike range to make the charts a little bit easier to read. So what we'll see here from left to right, top to bottom, we'll see the net cumulative volume. This is essentially showing us the net volume over time and segmented by takers buying or selling. And so we can see in blue, darker blue lines are net buying, so we can see net buying of calls, and darker red lines are net selling, in this case likely puts instead of in the money calls. We also have on the right hand side, it's the same type of flow, but this is going to be cumulative vega. So instead of looking at just contracts traded, we are looking at contracts times the vega value, so we can see the net vega exposure. Same thing down here in terms of Greeks. Bottom left chart is going to be cumulative gamma, and then bottom right chart is going to be cumulative delta. So again, we know the delta of the contract, the gamma of the contract, so on and so forth. We know if the takers or the street is buying or selling that particular contract, and now we can see sort of net effect through time. Jumping to the positioning, same type of idea here. So what we'll see here, again, running in the upper right-hand corner, we'll see the net positioning or the open interest for a given contract. So this assumes that at the beginning of the date, the position is 0. So we're looking over this date range, what the current positioning is for a particular contract. And this says active positioning, so we ignore expired contracts. So what we can see here is that the $40,000 call is, the street is net long a lot of these. We can see the same type of thing here on the right-hand side. This is going to be a more historical perspective. Again, only active contracts. If we scroll down a little bit, we can run this chart again, but including the expired contracts. So top charts are going to be active contracts. Bottom charts are going to include active and expired contracts. So we can see what that positioning looks like over time. Instead of letting this run, I'll jump to the next chart. Gamma profiles. This is going to be from a dealer's perspective. So again, I can pick out a date of interest, a time of interest as well. Everything is considered UTC. So let's just say I want to go to 8 a.m. UTC on the 6th of December 2023, which is the recording date of this video. Now we can go ahead and see what the gamma dealer exposure is at that time. So while this runs, and then one thing to keep in mind when we're talking about gamma profile exposures for dealers is in this particular chart, unlike the GUI chart, what we do is we normalize each contract to be at the money gamma, which is peak gamma, and which will give us smooth curves. Again, shorter dated contracts at the money will have higher gamma than long dated contracts at the money, and that's something to keep in mind. But again, if we smooth out the curves by assuming peak gamma, or where gamma will reside if spot actually gets to that particular strike, will give us these smooth looking curves as opposed to the current gamma that we will see in the GUI charts elsewhere. All right, so this is what it looks like for Bitcoin. We can essentially see that dealers are net short max gamma at 41,000. Current spot price is going to be this vertical dotted line. And so that tells us essentially where the current spot is and where dealers are going to be the most short and need to hedge via hedging vehicles such as the perpetual or the futures. We can have the same type of profile here for Vega. So instead of looking at gamma, we're looking at net Vega. And so this will have an interesting weighting because where gamma is more heavily weighted on short-dated expirations, Vega is more heavily weighted on long dated expirations just by the nature of Greek calculations. And so what we'll see here is a very different type of chart, but it encompasses the profile of Vega that dealers are currently inventorying in the market. This will take a little bit of time to load. Again, Streamlit is a very quick and dirty way for us to get production ready endpoints to our customers in a visual format. It's not optimized for speed or anything like that. It's really to get a visual format for some of these more complex endpoints that customers might be dealing with, who might not necessarily have the technical background to interact directly from the API into their own systems with these endpoints. We now have a Vega exposure outstanding. We can also see here on the y-axis, this is the change in millions of dollars for a 1 point change in implied volatility across the board of dealers. Our last set of charts here is the futures charts. These are some of the most interesting charts for trading perpetuals and futures. We support various exchanges, and we take the literal string for the instrument name. Right now, this is going to default to Binance. We're looking at the Bitcoin USDT contract, and we'll have a bunch of charts here around positioning and liquidations and estimated OI buildup and liquidation levels. So I will walk through those here. So now that we have this loaded, the first chart that we see here is essentially going to be the open interest on the lower line chart. In this particular case, the open interest is in number of Bitcoin, so it's coin open interest. With different instruments, it might be US dollar open interest. So this bottom line chart will default to the instrument type. And then what we see here are in bubbles, we'll see liquidations. So green bubbles are buy liquidations, so that's a short needing to buy back to close out. The red liquidations are long liquidations. That's someone who's long who needs to sell in order to close out. What we have here in the blue lines are estimated liquidation levels. So basically what we do here is we look at where open interest is accrued and built up. We do this on a 5-minute candle level. So what we'll do is we'll look at 5-minute intervals. We tally up the buys versus the sells to understand if it's a net buying or a net selling candle. And then from there, we'll see the change in open interest. And if the open interest increases on, say, a net buying candle, then we know that new longs have been established in open interest. And then we assume a static leverage ratio across exchanges, sort of the average leverage that we've historically seen, and we use that as the band for liquidation levels. So you can see here, the deeper the blue line is, the more open interest has been established there. So in this particular case, 40,700, 40,800 is a big level where people could get potentially liquidated. And then on the upper hand side, we could see up here kind of at the $45,000 level, and then most recently at the $42,900 level. If I scroll down a little bit, what we can see here are hourly liquidations. These are essentially directly from the exchange. We can see the liquidations that have occurred and are reported by the exchange. Same thing here. What we do here is we just take a tally of these liquidations over time. So it's a cumulative chart. And then here we look at the cumulative net delta. So what we're doing here is we're looking at, again, a 5-minute candle. We look at the net buys versus the net sells. And then we could see if buys or sales are dominant. And then from there, we can see if net buying or net delta exposure is being built up, or if net short exposure is occurring. And then here we can do the same thing, but what we're doing here is we're looking at the total leverage ratio, and we're seeing where the buys versus the sells come in terms of the total leverage. So this is essentially this bottom chart, estimated leverage, is essentially the cumulative version of these blue line charts. So we can see up here, there's not a lot of blue lines above the price, so there's very little shorts built up, and there's a lot of longs built up, where we can see essentially the blue lines are heavy in terms of their coloration, signifying a big buildup in OI. And so we could see this breakout here as well. If you need any more help around calculations or explanations, there is a help tab here. You can go ahead and click the help tab and you'll see a breakdown of everything as well. I hope you found this helpful. Thank you very much, and good luck trading.